I think most of us like to believe we're good people, that if we saw someone in trouble, of course we'd be the one to step up and help. But what if the situation itself, the very context of the crisis, could turn us into passive observers? Today we're going to dive into the fascinating and, yeah, sometimes unsettling psychology of why we help and why sometimes we just don't. This is the question that gets right to the heart of it, isn't it? We've all heard these stories, or maybe even been in a situation where someone clearly needed help, and a whole crowd of people just stood there. What is going on in our heads in those critical moments? Well, to really understand this, we've got to look at a case that completely changed social psychology forever. So, back in 1964, in Queens, New York, a young woman named Kitty Genovese was attacked on her way home. Her screams for help actually echoed through her apartment building. Many of her neighbors heard her. Some even saw bits and pieces of the attack. But for over 30 minutes, nobody called the police. Now, this wasn't a case of a few bad people. It was a crowd of otherwise good, normal people who just failed to act. And it left the entire world asking one thing: why? To even begin to answer that question, first we have to figure out where our moral judgments even come from. And it turns out it's a lot less about logic than you might think. It really starts with a gut feeling. This is what's called the social intuitionist model. And think of it like this: your moral brain is kind of like a gut-driven elephant with a logical rider on top. The elephant, that's our intuition. It just immediately leans one way or the other. And the rider, that's our reasoning. He just comes up with a story later to explain why the elephant went that way. We get this flash of right or wrong, and then our brain constructs this logical explanation after the fact to justify the feeling it already had. So the really key thing to get here is that we're basically running on two tracks. You've got moral intuition. It's like a gut punch. It's fast. It's emotional. And then you've got moral reasoning. That's the slow, deliberate story we tell ourselves and everyone else to explain that gut feeling. We feel first and we think second. So let's put your own moral intuition to the test. You've probably heard of this one, right? It's a classic thought experiment that is designed specifically to pit these two systems, our gut and our reason, directly against each other. Okay, so I want you to picture it. There's a trolley, it's hurtling down the tracks, totally out of control. Ahead, there are 5 people tied up. They can't move. You are standing right next to a lever. If you pull it, the trolley switches to a different track and you save those 5 people. The catch? Of course there's a catch. There is one person tied to that other track. So, do you pull the lever? On one hand, you've got the cold, hard math, right? The utilitarian calculation to sacrifice 1 life to save 5. The numbers seem pretty clear. But on the other hand, there's the emotional weight of making that choice. So what do most people do when they're faced with this? Well, it turns out, in this version of the problem, the vast majority of people say yes, they'd pull the lever. It feels tough, but the logic is just too compelling. Saving 5 is better than saving 1. In this case, our moral reasoning seems to line up pretty nicely with our gut. But if we have this kind of built-in moral compass, that just brings us right back to our original haunting question. Right, let's go back to that night in Queens. If our moral intuitions are so powerful in these thought experiments, why did they fail so catastrophically in the real world for Kitty Genovese? The answer isn't that her neighbors were immoral. It's that the social situation itself created these powerful psychological forces that basically suppressed their impulse to act. It silenced that initial gut feeling. And the first of these forces is something I guarantee we've all felt before. It's called diffusion of responsibility. When you're the only person who can help, 100% of the responsibility is on your shoulders. But when you're in a crowd, that responsibility gets sliced up and divided among everyone there. You start thinking, oh, surely someone else will call the police. Somebody else must be doing something. The more people there are, the less responsible any single one of us feels. And this is not just a theory. It is backed up by some truly startling data. Take a look at this classic experiment. When a person thought they were the only witness to someone having a seizure, 85% of them went to get help. But, and this is wild, when they thought they were in a group of 5 people, that number plummeted to just 31%. The crowd didn't make them safer. It actually made them silent. Yeah, this image just sums it up perfectly. Every single person walks by thinking somebody else will help him, and each one is outsourcing their moral responsibility to some anonymous stranger in the crowd. But there's a second, even sneakier force at play here too. It's called pluralistic ignorance. Look, emergencies are often really confusing. Is that person on the ground drunk, or are they having a heart attack? Are those shouts a real fight or just some friends messing around? Because we're not sure, we look to other people for clues. But here's the trap. Everyone else is doing the exact same thing. So when we see a crowd of people all acting calm and cool, we take that as a signal that everything must be okay, even if every single one of us is panicking on the inside. Okay, so all these psychological hurdles, they can make it seem like we're just fundamentally wired to be selfish, but we're also a deeply, deeply cooperative species. So what's the logic that pushes us to help each other, even when it's not immediately good for us? Well, game theory actually gives us a really powerful model for figuring this puzzle out. This right here is the classic prisoner's dilemma. Imagine you and a partner get caught for a crime. The police put you in separate rooms and they offer you a deal. The options are all laid out on this grid. If you both stay silent, that is, you cooperate with each other, you both get a small penalty. But if you betray your partner, you might walk free. The catch? If you both betray each other, you both get an even worse outcome. It perfectly shows that tension between what's best for you personally versus what's best for the group. So what is the best long-term strategy in this game of cooperation? Well, it turns out it's a super simple but brilliant one called tit for tat. You start by being helpful. Then you just mirror whatever the other person does. They cooperate, you cooperate. They betray you betray them. But, and this is key, if they start cooperating again, you immediately forgive them and go back to cooperating too. It's a strategy that's nice, but it's not a pushover. It's forgiving, but it's also clear. And in countless simulations and in a lot of real-world social groups, this simple rule has proven to be the most effective for building long-term cooperation. Okay, so we've explored the psychology that can hold us back and the logic that can push us forward. So let's bring it all together. How can we actually use this knowledge to become someone who acts? The key, really, is to understand the psychological traps of the bystander effect and then consciously work to disable them, both for yourself and for the people around you if you're the one who needs help. Research shows us exactly what works. First, you have to make your need completely clear. Yell, "Help." As the slide shows, this one single action can skyrocket your chances of getting help to as high as 100% compared to as low as 20% for victims who are silent. Second, and this is the real game changer, you have to eliminate the diffusion of responsibility. Don't just shout into the void. Pick one person. Point. Make eye contact. Say, "You, in the blue coat, call 911. You've just shattered the bystander effect for that one person. You've made them 100% responsible, and in that moment, they are overwhelmingly likely to act. So ultimately, it really comes down to this. The bystander effect is a powerful, invisible force, but it is not invincible. By understanding these social pressures, we can learn to spot them in the moment and make a different choice. The decision isn't made by the crowd. It's made by the individuals within it. And the only real question is, which one will you be?